Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. Heading up to Virginia right now. I got done in South Carolina and did a whole bunch of lessons, met a lot of cool people, and may have to go back down there after this little trip up here. I'm going to stay a couple weeks around Richmond, Roanoke, Newport News. I may go up to Delaware for just a few days. I've been asked to come up there, so we'll see. I just play it by ear, I don't really need to schedule things too far in advance. I got to be back for a big project I'm doing the middle of August in Chattanooga. I'll tell you more about that later. That's exciting, what is getting ready to happen. But anyway, I was thinking about back in the, in my heyday. I guess I was probably 32, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana was a big hot spot for pool, and the pool hustlers were all there. Anybody that was somebody had either been there, was there, or was getting ready to go there, because a guy named Flyboy, is what they called him, Jimmy Spears, was there with suitcases full of money. And he used to be a champion player, but back in the 70s he got in the gambling business, cards and poker machines and stuff like that, and did exceptionally well. So he made a bunch of money, and when he went back to playing pool, because he loved to gamble, but he hadn't been playing in several years, so he had gained weight, and his game had went down significantly, and he just didn't really want to admit that, I guess. So he was playing really high and against some of the greatest gamblers in the world. I was in there one night when Shannon Dalton gave him the 7 in the break on a bar table and beat him out of $130,000. And I was betting on the side. I won $15,000 on the side, and really wasn't betting that high considering what they're playing for in the middle. But that's nice to be, in a spot where you can win that much any given night. And I had done pretty well myself playing, but I ended up getting talked into playing Amarillo Slim, the same game that Efren Reyes had been giving him, and that's 14-5, 15-5. So, when I was breaking, I had to go to 15. Slim went to 5, and when he was breaking, I went to 14, and Slim went to 5. And he was a really smart player. He's a legendary poker player and pretty notorious for being, really tricky, really cunning and clever. You know what I mean? So I knew I was up against, the nuts, but I thought I could outrun it because I'd learned this bank system from Tony Fargo, and I'd been practicing it for about 3 weeks before I went to Baton Rouge. So my shot making was super good, but my banking was a lot better than anybody could have imagined at that time. I wasn't a bank pool player, but I probably was banking as well as anybody at that particular time. So I gave Amarillo Slim that game, and I had a guy in with me that went in half. He's the one that talked me into playing the game. Now, I thought he was in with me anyway. So I, played Slim. We must have played for about 10 or 11 hours. But I played some of the best pool that I've ever played. I made so many shots off the end rail, it just got him weak where, he didn't know where to leave me. I mean, because, my range was so good off that end rail that anytime he left me something down there, I'd just cut one in, in the middle of the table, go into the stack and run 12 balls. Or I ran 14 and 15 many times against him. So, I got him weak and was able to beat him. I remember at the end, I scratched, and he had a ball down by his pocket, like a diamond in and a diamond out, so only about maybe a foot and a half from the pocket, if that. and he wouldn't shoot at it. Instead, he cross-banked a ball because I had him so weak that he didn't have any confidence in making any shots, because every time he came to the table, I had a ball hanging in my pocket, and he was just knocking balls out of my pocket most of the night, so it got him all messed up. So I ended up beating him out of 32,000. Now, like I said, I didn't know anything was going on, but when I went to give the guy that was in with me his 16,000, man, I could tell something was really wrong with him. He looked like somebody just run over his pet dog or something. He couldn't even muster a smile, and I just won 16,000 for him, and he didn't give me any jelly, which is a percentage that you generally would get if you win that much money for somebody. And it didn't take me long to put two and two together that he had actually been backing Slim and went half with me. So they did that just to beat me out of the 16,000 or whatever they could win. And, I was oblivious to it. And I just absolutely outran the nuts. And I've done that on several occasions. It was tricky betting against me because I had a gear that I could get into that it really didn't matter what I spotted people. And, you'll see like Dennis Orcolo and, Tony Shohan playing one pocket. And, some of those guys are doing that these days, which they're a little more, they're more solid players than I was, but I just had that top gear, and was super aggressive. So it was just intimidating because when I was on, I made the game look like a joke. And that's what I teach now, is how I did that, because there was a way that I aligned to the shots where I never really had to aim. I just felt like I was hitting everything straight in or straight into the edge of the ball, like a half ball shot. So I was either coming off the center or the edge on every shot, and then just really connecting, different portions of the cue ball, and doing this subconsciously to either the center or the edge. So a straight in shot, obviously center to center. But if you have a little bit of a cut, it would, what I do is I just cue it slightly to the inside and shoot it like it's straight in, and it'll cut a little bit. And there's a trick to it. You have to know how to do the footwork and how to go down on the shots like the champions do, which is using their hips to go down rather than going down with their head. So they keep their, from the waist up, we keep our body position as similar as possible. In other words, keep the back straight and the posture really good, and then you push your hips back, and that clears way for you to put your stick in front of you and go down and shoot like you're shooting out of the center of your chest. And that's how I learned. I had to learn this after I was already a top level player, but I learned how the body mechanics worked, because to beat guys like Efren Reyes and Earl Strickland and Johnny Archer and Buddy Hall, Mike Sigel and Kim Davenport and Alan Hopkins and all those guys, you can't do it unless you're as solid fundamentally as they are. And I just didn't really have it down, but it took me about 2 weeks, I guess, and I got it down to where it was natural, and then the game was just so easy. From that point on, I played my best pretty much all the time. But yeah, the double steer, you got to watch that. I think most of the time when there's somebody losing a lot of money in one area, you can just about count on him getting double steered, usually by somebody he thinks is his friend that probably has a grudge against him, even if it's invented because the guy has more money than him or took away his girlfriend when he was in high school, or whatever the case may be. They'll invent ways to screw people over, some of them, treacherous world. But it's not even 10% as bad on the pool hustling level as it is like dealing with the stock exchange and Wall Street. And God, they're buying $380 million worth of debt based assets right now a day, the central banks. And of course, you're never going to hear that on the news. $380 million. You can go to their website and look at it. Between July 6th and today, this is about the end of July, and that is the average. So there's some cons going on that are just astronomical. And we're all getting to see it, whether you believe it or not. It's too obvious to me. And so I try to help people when I can to see some of this stuff, because I've never been in a situation where you were better off not knowing you were getting hustled. It's always better to know, because then you can put the turnaround on them, or the re-rob. That reminds me when I was in Wichita, Kansas, at Burke Steakhouse, Chester Burke. I told a little story about him when Strong Arm John got jarred in his place, but he told me a story when I was there. See, he used to rob banks, and he got double steered by one of his partners, and they robbed this bank, and they took him out in the country, and they took all the money and left him out in the country, put a gun on him and kicked him out of the car. Probably should have killed him, because he ended up doubling back and finding them later. And he said he went in this house where they were at, and he got one guy in the kitchen and, subdued him, and then took the guy that actually had double steered him and robbed him into the kitchen, and he told him to get on his knees and open his mouth. And he put that gun in his mouth, he said, and knocked out all the guy's teeth. And he told the guy, he says, listen, he said, I want to tell you something. He says, when you rob somebody, you better make sure they don't put the re-rob on you. Chester Burke, man, he was like probably 86 when I knew him, but you could tell he was not to be messed with, and that's more on the dark side of the gambling. Anyway, this is CJ Wiley. If you enjoyed this story, join me at cjwiley.com or Mastering Pocket Billiards if you want to learn more about my systems, techniques, and fundamentals I use to become one of the top gamblers in the world and the ESPN World Champion. I'd be glad to help you if you are in the Virginia area and you want to try to schedule a lesson. I got a couple slots. I'm not going to stay real busy, but I can always work somebody in. Just email me at cjwiley@cjwiley.com. Till next time, over and out.